At 3:47 in the morning, a pregnant woman was crawling across her bathroom floor in a $12 million mansion, bleeding, barely breathing, reaching for a phone she could not quite
It really
touch.
was.
She dialed
I can't remember the
911,
last time
but
I
the voice
laughed
that
so much.
answered was not a dispatcher. It was the woman who had been poisoning her for 5 months. The same woman who smiled at her every morning. The same woman who brought her tea and called her sister. The same woman who was sleeping with her husband. And here's the part that will keep you up tonight. The husband knew.
I can state
He
with
knew about the
absolute
affair.
certainty
He knew
that
about
the
the
defendant
tea.
was
And when his
fully
pregnant
aware of
wife
the
showed him
risks
video
involved
evidence
before
of the
proceeding.
poison being poured into her cup, do you know what he said? He said, "There has to be an explanation." 47 seconds. That is how long their baby did not breathe after the emergency delivery. 47 seconds of silence where a cry should have been. And when the truth finally came out, it was worse than anyone imagined. Because the mistress was not acting alone. She was sent. She was paid. And she had done this before. This is the story of Caroline Whitfield, a woman who was betrayed by everyone she trusted, poisoned in her own home, and nearly lost everything: her baby, her marriage, her life. But what she did next will change the way you think about trust, intuition, and the quiet voice inside you that says something is wrong when everyone else says you are overreacting. Stay until the end. This one matters. Lesson and value statement. Here is what this story will give you that most stories do not. It is not just entertainment. It is a reminder that your instincts are not paranoia. Your gut feeling is not jealousy. And the most dangerous thing you can do is stay polite while someone is slowly destroying your life. If one woman hears this story today and finally trusts herself enough to ask the hard question, to check the tea, to stop making excuses for someone who does not deserve them, then this story did what it was meant to do. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if it made you think about someone you know or something you have been ignoring, do me a small favor. Hit that like button, not for the algorithm, for the next woman who needs to hear this but has not found it yet. Every like, every share, every comment pushes this story into the feed of someone who might be living it right now and does not know it yet. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. And drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever had a gut feeling that everyone told you was nothing but turned out to be everything? I read every single one.
Caroline Whitfield was crawling across the bathroom floor at 3:47 in the morning, 8 months pregnant, with blood on her hands and a telephone just beyond her reach. The marble tile was cold against her knees. Her silk nightgown was soaked through with sweat, and the cramping in her abdomen felt like someone had reached inside her body and was twisting everything they could find. She stretched her fingers toward the phone on the vanity counter, knocking over a bottle of perfume that shattered against the floor, filling the air with jasmine and broken glass. She finally grabbed the phone and dialed 911. The screen blurred through her tears as she pressed it to her ear, waiting for the dispatcher, praying for help. But the voice that answered was not a dispatcher. "Oh, Carrie," the voice said, smooth and calm and almost amused. "You really should have just stayed in bed." It was Megan. Carrie dropped the phone. The screen cracked against the marble, and as another wave of agony ripped through her pregnant body, she understood with perfect, terrible clarity that the woman she had trusted with her home, her family, and her health had been trying to kill her all along. 6 months earlier, Caroline Whitfield believed she was the luckiest woman in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was standing in the nursery of their 12,000-square-foot colonial mansion, holding paint swatches against the wall and talking on speakerphone with her best friend, Lauren Beck, trying to decide between two shades of pale yellow. "Buttercream or French vanilla?" Carrie said, tilting the swatches toward the window. "James likes the buttercream, but I think it looks like the inside of a hospital cafeteria." "Go with your gut," Lauren said through the phone. "And I mean that literally. You are growing a human being inside your body. That gives you veto power over all paint decisions for the next 18 years. Carrie laughed. At 31 years old, 5 months pregnant with her first child, married to a man who adored her, living in a house that most people only saw in magazines, she had every reason to laugh. Life was good. Life was beautiful. Life was exactly what she had always wanted. "How was your date last night?" Carrie asked, switching subjects. Lauren groaned. "He showed up in cargo shorts, Carrie, cargo shorts, to a steakhouse with cloth napkins, and a sommelier. I looked at him standing there with 17 pockets, and not a single ounce of self-awareness, and I thought, this is it. This is rock bottom. What did you do?" "I ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu, excused myself to use the restroom, walked straight through the kitchen, out the back door, and got in an Uber. Left him with a $300 tab and a life lesson about appropriate dinner attire." Carrie was still laughing when she heard the front door open downstairs. James's footsteps on the hardwood, quick and excited. He appeared in the nursery doorway, holding a bouquet of peonies in one hand and a small silver frame in the other. "Close your eyes," he said, grinning. Carrie closed her eyes. She felt him place the frame in her hands. "Okay, look." It was the ultrasound photo from last week, beautifully framed in sterling silver with the words "Baby Girl Whitfield" engraved along the bottom. Their daughter, their Lily. "James, this is beautiful," Carrie whispered, running her thumb across the glass. "I cannot take credit. Megan had the idea. She found the engraver and picked it up this morning. She is incredible. Honestly, I do not know what I would do without her." There it was, that tiny pinch in Carrie's chest. Not pain exactly, not jealousy, just a small, sharp awareness, like touching a door handle and getting a static shock. You pull your hand back, but you do not think about it again. She should have thought about it. Megan Hale had been James' executive assistant for 14 months. She was 29, Dartmouth educated, impeccably dressed, and ruthlessly efficient. She managed James' schedule with the precision of air traffic control, remembered the names of every client's spouse and children, and somehow always smelled like fresh linen and vanilla, even at the end of a 14-hour day. Carrie had liked her immediately. It was hard not to. Megan was warm without being pushy, helpful without being overbearing, and genuinely interested in Carrie's pregnancy in a way that felt sisterly rather than intrusive. "Mrs. Whitfield, my mother always made this bone broth when my aunts were pregnant," Megan had said one afternoon, arriving at the house with a glass container of golden liquid. "It is incredible for first trimester nausea. Old family recipe." Carrie had been grateful. James worked 12-hour days building his hotel empire, and she often felt isolated in the big house, especially since she had given up her law career to focus on the pregnancy. Having someone who checked in, who brought thoughtful gifts, who seemed to genuinely care, it meant the world. Within weeks, Megan was bringing something by the house almost every other day. Herbal tea blends, she said, were pregnancy safe. Homemade cookies, smoothies packed with vitamins. She texted Carrie articles about prenatal nutrition. She sent weekly flower arrangements to the house with handwritten notes. "Thinking of you and baby Lily. She is honestly like a little sister at this point," Carrie told Lauren over lunch one day. Lauren put down her fork and stared at Carrie with the expression she usually reserved for opposing counsel who had just made a critical error. "Babe," Lauren said slowly, "nobody is that nice for free. Even golden retrievers want a treat." "You are so cynical." "I am a divorce attorney. Cynicism is not a personality flaw. It is a job qualification. I am telling you, something about that woman sets off every alarm I have. You have not even met her. I do not need to meet a shark to know it has teeth." Carrie rolled her eyes and changed the subject. Lauren was brilliant, but paranoid. She saw threats everywhere. because she spent her days watching marriages implode. That was not Carrie's life. Carrie's marriage was solid, James was devoted, and Megan was just a kind, thoughtful woman who happened to work for her husband. But there was a moment, just one moment, that planted a seed Carrie could not quite uproot. It was at the company's annual gala at the Whitfield Grand in Manhattan. Carrie was 6 months pregnant, wearing a custom navy blue gown, feeling beautiful and proud as James prepared to give his keynote speech. She was standing near the stage when she saw Megan approach James from behind. Megan reached up and adjusted his tie. It was a small gesture, quick and practiced, the kind of thing a wife does. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Not a look that Carrie could describe exactly, not a touch that crossed any clear line, but an energy, a familiarity that went beyond professional. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then Megan stepped back. James walked on stage, and the moment evaporated like it had never happened. Carrie told herself she was imagining things. Hormones, pregnancy brain, the kind of irrational jealousy that every expecting mother feels when her body is changing and her husband spends long hours with an attractive younger woman. She told herself all of this, and she almost believed it. But that night, lying in bed while James slept beside her, Carrie placed her hand on her belly and felt Lily kick. And she whispered something she would not remember saying until months later, when the words would come back to her like a prophecy. Something is wrong, baby girl. Mama can feel it. Here is something every woman needs to hear, and it is worth saying plainly because too many people learn it too late. When someone inserts themselves into the most intimate moments of your marriage, that is not helpfulness. That is positioning. There is a difference between a colleague who is professional and supportive and a person who is slowly, carefully, deliberately making themselves indispensable. The first respects boundaries. The second is erasing them. And by the time you notice the difference, the boundaries are usually already gone. Carrie did not notice, not yet. But her body was keeping score even when her mind refused to. The headaches started in her 7th month, then the dizziness, then the nosebleeds that came without warning, staining her pillowcase, spattering the bathroom sink. She was losing weight instead of gaining it. Her hair was thinning. Her skin had taken on a grayish tint that no amount of moisturizer could fix. It is just the pregnancy, she told herself every morning as she choked down another cup of Megan's special wellness tea. Everything will be fine after the baby comes. She poured the tea down her throat and smiled and said thank you, and never once considered that every sip was bringing her closer to death. The receipt was crumpled in the inside pocket of James' sport coat. Carrie found it while sorting laundry on a Sunday afternoon, which is how most women discover the first evidence that their lives are about to collapse, not through dramatic confrontations or private investigators, through laundry. It was from Chez Laurent, a restaurant in Manhattan that Carrie knew well, because James had proposed to her there 8 years ago, dinner for two, a bottle of Chateau Margaux at $400. Last Thursday evening, the same Thursday James had told her he was stuck in back-to-back meetings and would be home late. Carrie stared at the receipt for a long time. She told herself there were 100 reasonable explanations. Client dinner, business meeting, maybe his mother had come into the city. She called James's mother, Patricia, just to check. Patricia Whitfield was a Connecticut socialite of the old-school variety, the kind of woman who wore pearls to breakfast and considered showing emotion to be a sign of poor breeding. She and Carrie had never been close. At the wedding, Patricia had smiled thinly and said, " 'Well, she certainly is. Enthusiastic.' as if enthusiasm were a communicable disease. Patricia, did you and James have dinner in the city last Thursday? Thursday? No, dear. I was at the garden club benefit. Why do you ask? No reason. Just checking. Carrie hung up and stared at the receipt again. Then she called Nathan Cross, James's business partner and childhood best friend. Nathan was the kind of man who peaked in prep school, all old money confidence and new money ambition, but he had always been friendly to Carrie. Nathan, congratulations on the Chicago deal. James mentioned you two celebrated Thursday night. There was a pause, just a beat too long. The Chicago deal? Oh, right. Yeah. Great evening. Listen, I have got to run. Give my best to James. He hung up before Carrie could ask anything else, but something in his voice, that slight hesitation, that careful tone, told her everything she needed to know. Nathan was covering for James, which meant James needed covering. Carrie did not confront her husband immediately. She waited 3 days watching him, studying his behavior the way she used to study case files when she was practicing law. She noticed things she had been ignoring for months. The way James angled his phone screen away from hers when texting. The extra hour at the gym that left him looking more stressed than refreshed. The slight distance in his eyes when she talked about the nursery or the baby names or their future. On Wednesday, she drove to Manhattan unannounced. She told James she was having lunch with Lauren, which was technically true. She would see Lauren afterward, but first she parked in the garage beneath James's office building and waited. She waited for 2 hours. She sat in her car, 7 months pregnant, watching the elevator doors through her windshield. She ate crackers to settle her stomach. She listened to a podcast about prenatal yoga. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that she would see James come out alone and feel foolish and drive to meet Lauren and laugh about her paranoia. At 4:17 in the afternoon, the elevator doors opened. James stepped out first. He was wearing the charcoal suit she had bought him for his birthday, the one that made his shoulders look broader and his waist look trimmer. He was laughing at something, his head tilted back, that full body laugh she had fallen in love with in college. Megan stepped out behind him. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that hugged every curve, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, her hand resting on James's forearm with an ease that spoke of practice, of habit, of ownership. They walked to James's car together, still laughing. Megan leaned close and whispered something in his ear. James smiled and shook his head, but he did not move away. He did not remove her hand from his arm. He did not create even an inch of distance between them. Then he looked up and saw Carrie standing 20 feet away, her pregnant belly leading the way, her face expressionless because she had gone somewhere beyond expression, somewhere cold and quiet where emotions could not reach her. James's smile disappeared like someone had slapped it off his face. "Carrie, what are you doing here?" "Having lunch with Lauren," Carrie said, her voice perfectly steady. "What are you doing here?" "We just finished a site review for the new hotel in Midtown. Megan was showing me the contractor bids. It is work, Carrie." Megan released James's arm and took a smooth step backward, her expression shifting to professional concern. "Ms. Whitfield, it is so good to see you. How are you feeling? How is the baby?" Carrie looked at Megan, really looked at her, and for the first time, she saw past the warmth and the helpfulness and the sisterly concern. She saw calculation. She saw patience. She saw a woman who had been playing a very long game and was not remotely worried about being caught because she was absolutely certain she was winning. "There is lipstick on his collar," Carrie said quietly. She was not looking at Megan anymore. She was looking at her husband. "It is coral. I do not own anything in coral." James looked down at his shirt. His hand went to his collar instinctively, and in that gesture, In that automatic, guilty reach, Carrie had her answer. It must have transferred during the site visit, Megan said quickly. The contractor's wife was there, and she is a hugger. You know how some women are. I know exactly how some women are, Carrie said. She turned and walked to her car. She did not slam the door. She did not cry. She did not speed out of the parking garage. She drove calmly, carefully, with both hands on the wheel, because she was carrying a baby, and she would not let anything endanger her daughter. Not even this. That night, Carrie had the worst cramping of her pregnancy. She lay in the guest bedroom. She could not bring herself to sleep next to James, curled around her belly as waves of pain rolled through her. At midnight, she called Dr. Thomas Wyatt, the family physician who had known the Whitfields for decades. Your blood work shows some anomalies, Dr. Wyatt told her the next morning, frowning at his computer screen. Elevated liver enzymes, low platelet count, traces of something I cannot quite identify. It could be pregnancy-related, but I want to run more tests. What kind of anomalies? The kind I do not like to see. How is your diet? Any new supplements? New foods? Carrie thought about Megan's tea, Megan's broth, Megan's cookies and smoothies and all those thoughtful, caring gifts that had been arriving at her door for months. No, she said, nothing new. Well, the baby looks healthy for now, but I need you to reduce your stress levels significantly. Your body is under strain that I cannot fully explain. That evening, James came home with tears in his eyes and his phone unlocked. Look, he said, holding the phone out to her. Look at everything, every text, every email, every call. There is nothing, Carrie. I have never touched Megan. She is my assistant. That is all she is. Carrie scrolled through his phone for 20 minutes. He was right. There was nothing. No flirtatious texts, no secret apps, no deleted messages that she could find. Everything was clean. Too clean. I will fire her, James said. Tomorrow, if that is what you need. Carrie looked at her husband. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. She was 7 months pregnant and exhausted and sick and scared. And the idea that her marriage was solid, that she had overreacted, that the lipstick really was from some contractor's wife who hugged too much. That idea was so much easier than the alternative. Do not fire her, Carrie said. Just be honest with me. James held her and kissed her forehead and promised that he loved her, that he loved Lily, that their family was everything to him. Carrie let herself believe it. She relaxed into his arms and told herself the storm had passed. She was wrong. The storm had not even started. 3 weeks passed. Carrie was now nearly 8 months pregnant, and her body was betraying her in ways she could not explain, and her doctors could not diagnose. She fainted in the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon, collapsing between the organic produce and the dairy aisle. She woke up on the floor with a stock boy holding her hand and a woman pressing a cold bottle of water to her forehead. Someone call an ambulance, the woman was saying. She is pregnant. Oh my God, she is really pregnant. Carrie insisted she was fine. She drove herself home, hands shaking, and found a clump of hair on her pillow when she sat down on the bed. Not a few strands, a clump the size of a silver dollar. The nosebleeds were coming daily now. She would be reading or cooking or just sitting quietly, and suddenly blood would pour from her nose like a faucet had been turned on inside her head. She kept tissues in every room of the house. She stopped wearing white. Dr. Wyatt called her back for an urgent appointment after her latest blood panel. Carrie, sit down, he said, and the tone of his voice made her stomach drop. Your liver enzymes are elevated in a pattern that I have only seen in cases of chronic, toxic exposure. Your kidneys are showing early signs of stress, and the compound in your blood, I have sent it to a specialist lab because I cannot identify it with our standard panels. What are you saying? I am saying that something is making you sick, and it is not the pregnancy. Carrie, is there any chance you are being exposed to chemicals, new cleaning products, home renovations, anything? No, nothing has changed. Something has changed, Dr. Wyatt said firmly. Your body does not lie. Something is entering your system that should not be there. That night, Carrie called Lauren. The doctor thinks I am being poisoned, Carrie said. And the word sounded absurd coming out of her mouth. Poisoned. People in Greenwich, Connecticut did not get poisoned. They got tennis elbow and seasonal allergies and mild depression from realizing their beach house was smaller than their neighbor's beach house. Okay, Lauren said, and her voice had shifted from friend mode to lawyer mode in the space of a syllable. First of all, stop drinking anything that anyone gives you that is not sealed from a store. I do not care if it comes from the Pope himself. If it does not have a factory seal, it does not touch your lips. Lauren. Second, start documenting everything. Dates, times, who gave you what, how you felt afterward. Buy a notebook and write it down by hand. Digital can be hacked. Paper is forever. You sound insane. Third, and I cannot stress this enough, if that tea she brings you smells like almonds, that is not chamomile, honey. That is a Lifetime movie, and you are the wife in the first act who everybody feels sorry for later. Carrie laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. You are ridiculous. I am a woman who has spent 12 years watching people destroy each other in the most creative ways imaginable. Listen to me. Stop drinking the tea. Carrie stopped drinking the tea. She did not pour it out where anyone could see. She did not refuse it when Megan brought it. She simply accepted the cup with a smile and a thank you, and then, when Megan left, poured it down the bathroom sink and rinsed the cup. Within 4 days, the nosebleeds stopped. Within a week, her energy returned. Within 10 days, her latest blood panel showed a significant improvement in liver function. Whatever was causing the elevated enzymes seems to have resolved, Dr. Wyatt said, clearly puzzled. Are you sure nothing changed in your routine? I stopped drinking a certain brand of herbal tea, Carrie said carefully. A friend was bringing it to me. Dr. Wyatt looked at her for a long moment. I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation about that tea. That evening, Carrie sat in the nursery, surrounded by Lily's tiny clothes and soft blankets and the silver-framed ultrasound photo that Megan had so thoughtfully arranged. And she made a plan. She was not going to panic. She was not going to confront anyone. She was going to do what she had been trained to do as a lawyer. She was going to build a case. She called Lauren the next morning. I need a favor. I need a private laboratory that can test biological samples without asking questions. I know a place. My forensic expert uses them for custody cases when we suspect drug use. What are you testing? The tea? I still have 3 sealed packets that Megan brought last week. Good girl. I will text you the address. And Carrie, I am also sending you something. What? A nanny cam. It looks like a decorative kitchen clock. Consider it a baby shower gift. Every new mom needs surveillance equipment. You really are insane. I am effective. There is a difference. Lauren's clock arrived the next day in a plain brown box. Carrie installed it herself on the kitchen shelf, angling it to capture the full counter area, including the tea canister where she stored Megan's blends. Then she waited. She did not have to wait long. 2 days later, while Carrie was at her weekly prenatal appointment, the camera recorded Megan Hale letting herself into the Whitfield house using a key, her own key, a key that Carrie did not know existed. The footage was clear and damning. Megan walked directly to the kitchen without hesitating, without looking around, with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. She opened the tea canister, pulled a small glass dropper bottle from her purse, and carefully added 6 drops of a clear liquid to the tea blend inside. She stirred it with a spoon, wiped the spoon clean, replaced the lid, and returned the canister to its exact position. Then she wiped down every surface she had touched with a cloth from her purse. Then she left. The entire visit took 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Carrie watched the footage 7 times. She sat at Lauren's kitchen table in Manhattan with her laptop open and her hands pressed flat against the wood to keep them from shaking, and she watched it 7 times. "That is attempted murder," Lauren said quietly. She was standing behind Carrie, watching over her shoulder, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Clear as day, she is adding a substance to your food supply with the intent to harm you. That is not ambiguous. That is not circumstantial. That is a woman poisoning a pregnant woman in her own home. I know what it is. What do you want to do?" "I want to show James." Lauren hesitated. "Carrie, are you sure that is the right first move? We could go straight to the police. He is my husband. He is Lily's father. He deserves to see what the woman he hired is doing to his family." Lauren said nothing, but her expression said everything. That evening, Carrie sat James down in his home office and played the video on her laptop. She watched his face as he watched the screen. She studied every micro-expression, every flicker of his eyes, every tiny movement of his jaw and hands, looking for the horror and outrage that any husband should feel upon learning that someone was poisoning his pregnant wife. James watched the video twice. Then he leaned back in his chair. "There has to be an explanation," he said. Carrie felt the floor shift beneath her. Maybe she was adding honey or vitamins. You know how she is about health stuff. She is always researching supplements and natural remedies. "James," Carrie said slowly, "she has a key to our house. I gave her a key months ago. She drops off documents sometimes when I'm traveling. She is adding something to my tea from a dropper bottle. A dropper bottle she brought in her purse and then wiped her fingerprints off every surface before leaving." "That does sound unusual," James admitted. "But we do not know what was in the bottle. It could have been elderberry extract or vitamin D drops. My doctor says I have been chronically poisoned for months. Doctors can be wrong." Carrie stared at her husband, and in that moment, she understood something that broke her heart more completely than any affair ever could. James did not want to believe it, not because the evidence was weak. The evidence was devastating, but because believing it meant confronting the truth about what he had allowed into their home. Believing it meant admitting that the woman he had hired, the woman he had trusted, the woman he had quite possibly been sleeping with, had been methodically trying to murder his wife and unborn child. And James Whitfield was not strong enough for that truth. "I will talk to her," James said. "Talk to her?" "I will sit her down and ask her directly what she was putting in the tea. If there is an innocent explanation, we will know. And if there is not, we will go to the police together." "I am calling the police now." "Carrie, wait," James said, and his voice took on an edge she had never heard before. "If we go to the police, it will be all over the news within hours. The Greenwich Gossip Network alone will have it on every Facebook page in Fairfield County by morning. And when the press picks it up, the company stock will tank. Our investors will panic. Everything I have built, everything we have built, will be at risk. Your wife is being poisoned, and you are worried about stock prices? I am worried about our family's financial future. Just give me 24 hours. Let me handle this my way." Carrie made the worst decision of her life. She gave him the 24 hours. The next morning, 3 things happened in rapid succession, and each one was worse than the last. At 9:15 in the morning, the private laboratory called with the results of the tea analysis. The samples contained ethylene glycol, the primary ingredient in antifreeze, combined with a slow-acting blood thinner commonly found in commercial rat poison. At the doses present in the tea, regular consumption would cause gradual organ damage, eventual miscarriage, and ultimately death, all mimicking the symptoms of a complicated pregnancy. The lab technician's exact words were, "Whoever made this blend knew exactly what they were doing. This was not accidental contamination, this was formulated." At 11:40 in the morning, while Carrie was still processing the lab results, her phone buzzed with an incoming email from an address she did not recognize. The subject line was empty. The email contained 12 photographs, James and Megan in a hotel room. The images were intimate and unambiguous, time-stamped from 3 weeks ago. The same week, James had sworn on his mother's life that he had never touched Megan. The same week, Carrie had chosen to believe him. In one photo, Megan was wearing the coral lipstick that had stained James's collar. She was smiling directly at the camera, as if she knew exactly who would eventually see these pictures, and wanted to make sure they got a good look. Carrie sat on the edge of her bed, 8 months pregnant, holding her phone in one hand and the lab report in the other. And the world narrowed to a single suffocating truth. Her husband was sleeping with the woman who was killing her, and he had looked her in the eyes and told her she was imagining things. At 2:17 that afternoon, Carrie was standing in the nursery, running her hand over the crib rail, trying to think clearly through the fog of betrayal and rage and terror when the first contraction hit. It was not like the cramping before. This was a freight train. This was a demolition. This was her body surrendering to the poison that had been accumulating in her organs for months. The poison she thought she had escaped by stopping the tea, but which had already done its damage. Silently, irreversibly, while she was busy trying to save her marriage. She fell. Her knees hit the nursery floor, and she grabbed the crib for support and felt another contraction rip through her, and she knew with absolute certainty that something was catastrophically wrong. She managed to dial 911 from the nursery floor. Real 911 this time. A real dispatcher who sent a real ambulance that arrived in 11 minutes, which felt like 11 hours. The paramedics found her unconscious, her blood pressure dangerously low, her body temperature dropping. The baby's heart rate was decelerating. The lead paramedic radioed ahead to Greenwich Hospital with 2 words that told the emergency room everything they needed to know. Code Blue. Baby Lily Whitfield was delivered by emergency cesarean section at 26 weeks gestation, 14 weeks before her due date. She weighed 1 pound and 12 ounces. She was the size of James's hand. She was not breathing. The surgical team worked with the calm, focused urgency of people who fight death for a living. They cleared her airway. They administered surfactant to her underdeveloped lungs. They began manual resuscitation, pressing tiny rhythmic compressions against a chest the size of a tennis ball. 47 seconds passed. Most people cannot hold their breath for 47 seconds. Try it sometime. Sit in a chair and hold your breath and count. Feel the pressure build in your chest and the panic rise in your throat and the desperate animal need to breathe clawing at the inside of your ribs. That is 47 seconds. That is how long Lily Whitfield did not take a breath. And then she did. A small, wet, furious sound that filled the operating room and made every person in it exhale simultaneously. She was alive, barely, connected to more machines than seemed possible for something so small, but alive. Carrie did not wake up until the next day. She opened her eyes to white ceiling tiles and the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the strange, hollow feeling of her belly being empty when it should have been full. She knew before anyone told her. She could feel the absence like a missing limb. "Lily," she whispered. The face that appeared beside her bed was not James. It was not Lauren. It was Patricia Whitfield, her mother-in-law, the society queen who had never fully approved of her son's choice of bride. Patricia was sitting in a plastic hospital chair, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her usually perfect hair uncombed, her eyes red and swollen. "Lily is alive," Patricia said immediately, reading the tear on Carrie's face. "She is in the NICU. She is fighting." Carrie closed her eyes. Tears leaked down her temples into her hair. "There is brain damage risk," Patricia continued, and her voice broke on the word risk. "The doctors are not sure yet. The poison, the early delivery, the oxygen deprivation. They are monitoring her hour by hour." "Where is James?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took Carrie's hand, which was perhaps the most alarming thing that had happened yet, because Patricia Whitfield did not touch people voluntarily. "I know about Megan," Patricia said. "I have known for months. James told me the affair was over, and I believed him because I wanted to, because it was easier to believe him than to confront the truth." She paused. "I should have warned you. I should have protected you and that baby. I will never forgive myself." "You knew," Carrie said flatly. "I knew about the affair. I did not know about the poisoning. Nobody did. But that is not an excuse. I saw you getting sicker and thinner and grayer, and I told myself it was just a difficult pregnancy. I saw my son pulling away from you, and I told myself it was just the stress of work. I have been lying to myself for months because the truth was too ugly for a woman like me to look at directly." Carrie stared at the ceiling. "I want a divorce. I know. But first, there is something you need to hear." Patricia leaned closer. "Nathan Cross introduced Megan to James deliberately. This was not a random affair. It was a strategy." "What are you talking about?" "Nathan has been trying to take over the company for years. He planted Megan in James's orbit to compromise him, to create a scandal that would force James out and give Nathan controlling interest. I found out last week from a friend whose husband sits on the board. Nathan has been positioning himself for a hostile takeover, and Megan was his weapon." Carrie's mind, even foggy with medication and grief, was still a lawyer's mind. "Are you saying Megan was working for Nathan?" "Megan was sleeping with James on Nathan's instruction. The poisoning, that was Megan going off script. She was supposed to seduce him, create a scandal, and help Nathan push James out. Instead, she became genuinely obsessed and decided to eliminate you permanently. So Nathan wanted my husband's company and Megan wanted my husband, and you and Lily were standing in the way of both." Detective Ryan Shaw was ex-military, early 40s, built like someone who still did push-ups every morning out of habit rather than vanity. He had the kind of face that was easy to trust and hard to lie to. He sat at Carrie's bedside with a digital recorder and a patience that suggested he had all the time in the world. "We arrested Megan Hale at her apartment this morning," he said. "We found a full chemistry setup in her kitchen. Ethylene glycol, warfarin, other compounds. We found a journal, handwritten, detailing a poisoning schedule that goes back 5 months. Dates, dosages, your reactions. She kept records, like she was running a science experiment." "What about Nathan Cross?" "We found burner phones in Megan's apartment with texts linking her to Cross, messages discussing James, the company, and what they called the timeline. We are building a case against him as well." "And James? Did he know?" Detective Shaw met her eyes. Based on our investigation so far, your husband appears to have been unaware of the poisoning. That does not mean he is innocent of wrongdoing. The affair was real. His negligence in allowing this woman into your life was real, but we have no evidence that he knew what Megan was doing to you. Carrie nodded. It was a strange kind of relief, knowing that her husband was a cheater, but not a murderer. A cold comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. Megan is being held without bail pending arraignment, Shaw continued. The evidence is overwhelming. She is not going anywhere. For 3 days, Carrie allowed herself to believe it was over. She sat beside Lily's incubator in the NICU and watched her daughter grow stronger. Lily's tiny fingers wrapped around Carrie's finger with surprising strength. Her oxygen levels improved. She opened her eyes, dark and curious, and seemed to study the world with an intensity that made the nurses smile. She is a fighter, the NICU nurse said, just like her mama. Lauren came every day with takeout and legal updates and stories about terrible dates that made Carrie laugh despite everything. I went out with a guy last week who told me within the first 5 minutes that he does not believe in modern medicine, Lauren said, pulling sushi containers out of a bag. He said his immune system runs on positive thinking and cayenne pepper. I said, my immune system runs on spite and Pinot Grigio, and we are clearly incompatible. Even Patricia was a comfort, arriving each morning with fresh clothes for Carrie and updates from the board meeting where Nathan's behavior was being scrutinized. For 3 days, Carrie felt safe. On the 4th day, her phone rang. It was Detective Shaw, and the tone of his voice told her everything before he said a word. Mrs. Whitfield, Megan Hale posted bail 2 hours ago. Nathan Cross paid it. $1 million, cash. Carrie's hand tightened on the phone. You said she was being held without bail. The judge revised the bail conditions at an emergency hearing this morning. Megan's defense attorney argued she was not a flight risk and had no prior convictions. She tried to kill me. She tried to kill my baby. I know, and it gets worse. Megan and Nathan's attorneys have filed a countersuit. They are claiming that you poisoned yourself as part of a scheme to frame Megan and gain advantage in a divorce. They're calling it fabricated evidence and parental manipulation. Carrie could not speak for several seconds. They are saying I poisoned myself. They are saying you are an unstable, attention-seeking woman who staged the entire thing. They have already spoken to the press. The tabloid headlines hit the next morning. Millionaire's wife faked poisoning in custody plot. Megan had given an exclusive interview to a national outlet, crying delicately, on camera, her voice trembling with rehearsed vulnerability. I was just trying to help her, Megan said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. She was struggling with the pregnancy, and I brought her teas and healthy food because I cared about her. And now she is accusing me of this horrific crime because she found out about the affair and wants revenge. The interviewer leaned in with practiced sympathy. So you are saying the affair was real, but the poisoning was fabricated? James and I fell in love. It was wrong, and I take full responsibility for that. But I would never hurt anyone. I am not capable of that. Carrie watched the interview from Lily's bedside, Drassas, her daughter fighting for life 10 feet away, and read the comments section until Lauren physically took her phone away. Stop reading that garbage, Lauren said. They believe her. Look at the comments. They think I am making it up. Internet comments are written by people who eat cereal over the sink at 2 in the morning. Their opinions are not evidence. But Nathan's lawyers were not just relying on public opinion. They filed an emergency motion for a custody evaluation, claiming that Carrie's mental instability and history of self-harm via poisoning made her an unfit mother. They wanted to take Lily. Carrie read the motion in her hospital bed, her hands shaking so badly the pages rattled like leaves in a storm. "They want my baby," she whispered. "Lauren, they are trying to take my baby." Lauren sat down beside her and took both of Carrie's hands. "Listen to me. They are not taking your baby. They are not taking anything. They threw the first punch. Now we hit back. And Carrie, when I hit back, people do not get up." "What do we do?" Lauren stood up and buttoned her blazer, which was her version of putting on armor. "We go to war." The next morning, Carrie reactivated her law license for the first time in 2 years. It felt like putting on a pair of shoes she had forgotten she owned, shoes that still fit perfectly and made her 3 inches taller. She had given up her career to focus on the pregnancy, on James, on being the wife and mother she thought she was supposed to be. Now she remembered that before she was Caroline Whitfield, Greenwich housewife, she was Caroline Mercer, top of her class at Columbia Law, the woman who had once made a senior partner cry during a mock trial. She was done being the victim. She was done being the wife who trusted too much and asked too few questions. She was done being afraid. Lauren and Carrie set up a war room in Lauren's Manhattan law office. A whiteboard on one wall, a timeline of events, photos, documents, lab reports, phone records, surveillance footage. Everything organized with the precision that had made Carrie one of the most promising young litigators in New York before she traded it all for a nursery and a man who did not deserve her. "First move," Lauren said, uncapping a marker. "Megan's financials. If Nathan was paying her, there is a paper trail." They subpoenaed Megan's bank records and discovered that Nathan Cross had wired her $200,000 over 18 months in installments disguised as consulting fees through a shell company called Bright Horizon Advisory. Bright Horizon Advisory has no website, no employees, no clients, and no office, Lauren read from the documents. Its sole purpose was to funnel money from Nathan Cross to Megan Hale. That is not consulting. That is conspiracy. "Second move," Carrie said, standing at the whiteboard with the red marker in her hand. "Megan's history. If she has done this before, there are other victims." They hired a private investigator named Jim Reeves, a retired FBI agent who looked like someone's friendly uncle but had a talent for finding things people wanted to stay buried. Within 2 weeks, Reeves had uncovered a pattern that made Carrie's skin crawl. 3 years before coming to Greenwich, Megan Hale had worked as an executive assistant for a real estate developer in Minneapolis named Robert Thatcher. She had an affair with Thatcher. His wife, Susan, developed mysterious health problems, including chronic fatigue, nosebleeds, and hair loss. The illness was never diagnosed. The marriage ended. Megan and Thatcher were together for 6 months before he ended the relationship and Megan moved away. 5 years before that, in Philadelphia, Megan had worked for a financial advisor named Craig Donovan. His wife, Kathleen, was hospitalized twice with symptoms consistent with heavy metal poisoning. Kathleen told doctors she suspected contamination but could not identify the source. The case was never investigated. The Donovans divorced. Megan left Philadelphia shortly after. 3 cities, Lauren said, staring at the whiteboard. 3 married men. 3 wives who got mysteriously sick. 2 marriages destroyed. And ours is the first one where she actually got close to killing someone. She was escalating, Carrie said, getting bolder, more confident, and more dangerous. Carrie contacted Susan Thatcher and Kathleen Donovan. Both women cried when they heard Carrie's story. Both said the same thing. Nobody believed me. "She was so nice," Susan said over the phone. "So helpful. She made me feel like I was going crazy. Everyone thought I was just jealous." "Same," Kathleen said. Even my own mother told me I was being paranoid. Carrie documented everything. Every phone call, every financial record, every medical report from every city. She built her case the way she had been taught in law school, brick by brick, fact by fact, until the wall was so high and so solid that no amount of Nathan Cross's money could knock it down. Patricia Whitfield, meanwhile, was waging her own campaign. She had spent 60 years building social capital in Connecticut and New York, and she cashed it all in for her granddaughter. She hosted a luncheon at the Greenwich Country Club, the kind of event where attendance was mandatory for anyone who wanted to remain in Patricia's good graces. Over poached salmon and sparkling water, Patricia stood up and addressed the room. "My daughter-in-law was poisoned in my family's home," she said, her voice steady as steel. "My granddaughter was born 14 weeks early and nearly died. These are not allegations. These are medical facts confirmed by 3 independent laboratories. Anyone who believes otherwise, anyone who shares or endorses the lies being spread by the people who did this, can remove themselves from my Christmas card list, effective immediately." In Patricia's world, removal from the Christmas card list was a social death sentence worse than actual incarceration. The tide began to turn. The criminal trial of Megan Elizabeth Hale began on a cold Monday morning in March, 7 months after baby Lily was born. The courtroom was packed. Local media had set up cameras outside. A sketch artist sat in the front row. Megan entered the courtroom looking like she had stepped out of a catalog. Navy dress, pearl earrings, minimal makeup. Her defense attorney, a silver-haired man named Richard Calloway, who had never lost a murder case, had obviously coached her on appearance. She looked young, she looked innocent, she looked like someone's daughter. Calloway's strategy was clear from his opening statement. Megan Hale was the victim. James Whitfield was a powerful, charismatic man who had seduced a vulnerable young employee, and then, when his wife discovered the affair, the entire family conspired to frame Megan for poisoning to protect their fortune and reputation. "This case is not about poison," Calloway told the jury. "This case is about power. The Whitfields are a wealthy, connected family who decided to destroy a young woman rather than face the embarrassment of a public divorce." The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Karen Wells, was methodical and devastating. She presented the lab reports, the surveillance footage, the journal, the financial records linking Megan to Nathan Cross. She brought in toxicology experts who explained exactly what ethylene glycol does to a human body over time. She called Dr. Wyatt, who described Carrie's declining health with clinical precision. But the defense had ammunition too. Calloway brought in a psychologist who testified that Carrie was suffering from severe pregnancy anxiety, which could cause her to misinterpret normal interactions as threatening. He produced character witnesses who described Megan as warm, caring, and gentle. He even had a toxicology expert of his own who suggested that the chemicals found in the tea could theoretically have been present due to contamination during manufacturing. By the end of the second day, some jurors were looking uncertain. Calloway was doing what good defense attorneys do. He was planting doubt. Lauren leaned over to Carrie during a recess and whispered, "We need a kill shot. Something they cannot explain away." The kill shot came from the most unlikely place. Jim Reeves, the private investigator, had continued digging into Megan's background even after the trial began. On the 3rd day, he called Lauren with information that changed everything. "I found her purchase records," Reeves said. Megan bought the antifreeze and the rat poison 3 weeks before she started working for James. Before the job, before the affair, before she ever met Carrie. Lauren nearly dropped her phone. 3 weeks before? She ordered the chemicals online using a credit card linked to her personal account. "I have the receipts, the shipping confirmations, and the delivery address." She planned this before she even walked through the door of James Whitfield's office. The poisoning was not a crime of passion. It was not because she fell in love and became jealous. She walked into that company with murder supplies already in her kitchen. This was premeditated from day one. This was the moment the case broke open. The prosecution recalled their toxicology expert and presented the purchase records. The timeline was irrefutable. Megan had acquired the means to kill Carrie before she had any relationship with James at all. This was not a woman driven mad by love. This was a calculated predator who had selected her targets in advance and arrived with a fully formed plan to eliminate the wife and take her place. The jury's sympathy evaporated like morning dew. Then came the moment that would make every news broadcast in the country. Carrie took the stand. She was calm. She was clear. She answered every question with the precision of the trained attorney she was, but without the coldness. She was a mother describing what had been done to her child, and there is no force on earth more compelling than that. The prosecutor asked her to describe the emergency delivery. "They told me my daughter was not breathing," Carrie said. 47 seconds. That is how long it took them to resuscitate her. Most people cannot hold their breath for 47 seconds. Try it sometime. Sit in a chair and count to 47. Feel that panic, that desperation, that primal need to breathe. Now imagine you are watching your baby feel that. Imagine you are lying on a surgical table with your body cut open, and the only sound in the room is silence, where a cry should be. And imagine knowing that the woman who caused it is sitting 10 feet away from you in designer shoes with a sympathy face she practiced in the mirror. The courtroom was silent. 2 jurors were crying. Megan, for the first time, looked away. The defense rested on a Thursday. The prosecution had one final witness. Nathan Cross walked into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled in front of him. He had cut a deal with federal prosecutors. Full testimony against Megan in exchange for a reduced sentence on his own charges of corporate fraud and conspiracy. Nathan's testimony confirmed everything Carrie and Lauren had uncovered. He had introduced Megan to James deliberately. He had funded her through the shell company. He had known about the affair and encouraged it, seeing it as leverage to force James out of the company. "I wanted his shares," Nathan said, his voice flat with resignation. "Megan was supposed to create a scandal, not a crime scene. When did you become aware that Ms. Hale was poisoning Caroline Whitfield?" the prosecutor asked. "I did not know until the arrest. Megan told me she was handling the wife situation, but I assumed she meant she was provoking a divorce. I did not ask for details. I did not want to know. You paid this woman $200,000, and you did not ask what she was doing with it? I paid her to be close to James. What she did beyond that was her own initiative. And after the arrest, when you posted her $1 million bail and helped her file a countersuit accusing Mrs. Whitfield of fabricating the poisoning?" Nathan shifted in his seat. "My lawyers advised me that if Megan went down, she would take me with her. Defending her was defending myself." "Even though you knew she had poisoned a pregnant woman?" "I told myself the evidence might not be as clear as it looked." "Mr. Cross, you told yourself a lot of things, but there is one more thing I need to ask you about. In your conversations with Megan Hale, did she ever discuss what she would do if her plan to be with James Whitfield did not work out?" Nathan's face changed. Something moved behind his eyes that looked very much like fear. "She said she had a backup plan. Can you describe this backup plan?" "She said if she could not have James, she would make sure nobody could. She said she was not the kind of woman who walks away with nothing." "Did you take this seriously?" "I thought she was being dramatic. Megan said a lot of things." "Mr. Cross, did you report this statement to anyone?" "No." "Even after you learned she had been systematically poisoning a pregnant woman?" Nathan said nothing. The silence was its own answer. Based on Nathan's testimony, police obtained a warrant to search Megan's storage unit across town, a rental she had never mentioned to anyone. Inside, they found a second journal. This one was different from the first. The first journal was clinical, organized, methodical, a poisoner's logbook. The second journal was something else entirely. It was a roadmap for murder. Not just Carrie's murder, James's murder too. In meticulous, flowing handwriting, Megan had detailed a plan to kill both James and Carrie if her original strategy failed. She would grieve publicly, play the devastated other woman, and use her connection to the Whitfield estate to gain control of assets through forged documents she had already begun preparing. The final entry in the journal was dated 2 days before her arrest. It read, "If I cannot have this family, I will burn it down and build my own from the ashes." The prosecution read this entry aloud in court. Megan sat perfectly still, her composure finally completely broken. Not because she was sad, not because she was ashamed, but because she had been caught. And for a woman who prided herself on being the smartest person in every room, being caught was the one thing she could not endure. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder of Caroline Whitfield. Attempted murder of Lily Whitfield. Aggravated assault. Criminal poisoning. Conspiracy. The sentencing hearing was held the following week. Carrie sat in the front row of the gallery with Lauren on one side and Patricia on the other. Lily was at home with a nurse, healthy and growing and blissfully unaware that a courtroom full of people was deciding the fate of the woman who had tried to end her life before it began. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Catherine Reynolds, addressed Megan directly. "Miss Hale, in my 32 years on the bench, I have seen many kinds of evil. Impulsive evil, desperate evil, evil born from rage or grief, or mental illness. Your evil is different. Your evil is patient. It plans, it smiles, it brings tea and cookies. It is the most dangerous kind of evil there is, because it looks exactly like kindness." Megan stared straight ahead, showing nothing. "This court sentences you to 35 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Nathan Cross, tried separately on federal charges, received 15 years for conspiracy, corporate fraud, and accessory to attempted murder." As Megan was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, she turned and looked at Carrie one final time. Her mouth opened as if to speak. Carrie held up her phone. On the screen was a photo of Lily, now 7 months old, round-cheeked and grinning, reaching for the camera with chubby hands. Carrie said nothing. She did not need to. The photo said everything. "I am alive. My daughter is alive. And you are gone." 1 year later, Carrie stood in the kitchen of her new house in Westport, Connecticut, making scrambled eggs while Lily banged a wooden spoon against her high chair tray with the ferocious joy of a toddler who has discovered percussion. The house was smaller than the Greenwich mansion, much smaller. 3 bedrooms, a modest yard, a kitchen that could only accommodate one person at a time without strategic maneuvering. But it was hers. She had bought it with money from the divorce settlement, which had been generous because James, to his credit, had not fought her on a single dollar. "More," Lily announced, which was her word for everything from food to music to wanting someone to pick her up immediately. She was 18 months old now, healthy and loud and fearless, with Carrie's sharp eyes and James's stubborn chin. "Eggs are coming, Your Majesty," Carrie said, sliding them onto a small plate shaped like a dinosaur. She set the plate in front of Lily and watched her daughter attack the eggs with both hands, getting approximately 30% in her mouth and the remaining 70% on her face, her hair, the high chair, and through some physics-defying trajectory, the ceiling. Carrie's phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Cannot make brunch Saturday. New client emergency. Her husband's business partner has been embezzling, and his assistant is suspiciously helpful. I swear this job is a lifetime movie on repeat. Rain check? Carrie smiled and texted back. Make sure the wife stops accepting homemade beverages. Trust me on this. She poured herself a cup of coffee, real coffee from beans she had ground herself, and sat down at the small kitchen table. Through the window, she could see the backyard where Lily would play this afternoon, the fence she had painted herself last summer, the garden she was slowly learning to tend. Small things, real things, things that belonged to her. The past year had been the hardest and most transformative of her life. After the trial, Carrie had done something she never expected. She reopened her law practice, but not the corporate litigation she had practiced before. She specialized in something new, representing women who had been victims of intimate partner poisoning, coercive control, and the kind of sophisticated domestic violence that hides behind wealth and charm and good manners. Her first client was Susan Thatcher from Minneapolis, who had finally found the courage to pursue a case against her ex-husband for covering up Megan's abuse. Her second client was Kathleen Donovan from Philadelphia. Her third was a woman she had never met, a stranger who found Carrie's name through a domestic violence advocacy group and called on a Tuesday afternoon, crying so hard she could barely speak. I think my husband's girlfriend is putting something in my food, the woman said. Nobody believes me. My own family thinks I'm being paranoid. I believe you, Carrie said. Tell me everything from the beginning. This was her work now. This was her purpose. Not the grand career she had imagined in law school, not the prestigious firm, or the partner track, or the corner office. Something smaller and fiercer and more important. She was the person she wished had existed when she needed one. James saw Lily every other weekend. He drove up from Manhattan, where he had moved after selling the Greenwich House. His hotel company had survived the scandal, restructured and refocused on hospitals and community projects instead of luxury developments. He was different now, quieter, more careful with his words, like a man who had learned that everything he says matters and nothing he says can be taken back. Their co-parenting relationship was civil and functional, not warm, not cold, the temperature of two people who had once loved each other very much and were now learning to love their daughter more than they loved their own pain. She said Dada at the park yesterday, James reported during one of his visits, his face lit up with the particular joy that only a toddler's first words can produce. She says Dada to the mailman too, Carrie said, and to the cat next door, and to a fire hydrant she seems particularly fond of. Do not take it personally. James laughed, and for a moment it was easy between them, the way it used to be before everything went wrong. Then the moment passed, as it always did, leaving behind a small ache that Carrie suspected would never fully disappear but would, over time, become so familiar she would forget it was there. Patricia visited every Sunday. She brought homemade pot roast that was aggressively seasoned and unsolicited parenting advice that was aggressively delivered, but she also brought a grandmother's love that was fierce and uncomplicated and exactly what Lily needed. That child needs a proper winter coat, Patricia said one Sunday, examining Lily's jacket with visible disapproval. This is polyester. Polyester. My granddaughter is not going to face a Connecticut winter in polyester. She is 18 months old, Patricia. She is going to face a Connecticut winter by eating snow and refusing to wear mittens. Then she will do it in cashmere. Lauren remained Carrie's closest friend and Lily's devoted godmother. She had not found a lasting romantic relationship, and she remained magnificently unbothered by this fact. Lily is the only person under 4 feet tall that I trust, Lauren said during one of their weekly dinners. And honestly, she is more emotionally mature than most men I have dated. She tells you exactly what she wants. She cries when she is upset, instead of pretending everything is fine, and she has never once shown up to a steakhouse in cargo shorts. Life was not perfect. Carrie still had nightmares sometimes, dreams where she was back on the bathroom floor. Reaching for the phone, hearing Megan's voice, she still flinched when someone she did not know well offered her food or drink. She still had moments of rage, so intense they took her breath away. Rage at Megan, at Nathan, at James, at herself for trusting when she should have questioned. But she was also learning something important, something she wished she had known years ago. And here it is, plainly because it is worth saying. Your instincts are not paranoia. Your suspicion is not jealousy. When something feels wrong, it usually is. And the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself is that you are overreacting, because that lie keeps you polite while someone else is destroying your life. Trust yourself. Believe yourself. Your survival depends on it. It was a Tuesday evening in October when Carrie put Lily to bed and went downstairs to work on a client's case. The house was quiet, except for the sound of wind in the trees outside and the soft hum of the baby monitor on the desk. She was reviewing medical records, looking for the pattern she had learned to recognize. The pattern that doctors often missed because they were not looking for it, because the idea that someone would slowly, methodically poison the person they claimed to love was too terrible for most people to consider. Her phone rang. A new number. She almost did not answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Whitfield? My name is Ellen Porter. I got your number from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They said you handle cases like mine. What is happening, Ellen? My husband's coworker has been coming to our house for months. She brings food. She is so nice. Everyone loves her. But I have been getting sick. Really sick. And nobody will listen to me. Carrie leaned back in her chair and looked at the photo on her desk. It was from Lily's first birthday party last month. Lily was covered in cake frosting, grinning with 4 teeth held between Carrie and Lauren, while Patricia looked on with an expression that was trying very hard to be dignified disapproval, but was clearly failing in the face of overwhelming grandmotherly pride. Ellen, I want you to listen to me very carefully, Carrie said. I believe you. I know exactly what you are going through because I survived it, and I am going to help you. But first, I need you to stop consuming anything this woman gives you. Today. Right now. People think I am crazy. You are not crazy. You are paying attention. There is a difference, and it might be the most important difference there is. Carrie pulled a fresh legal pad from her desk drawer and uncapped her pen. Now, tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Start from the first time something felt wrong and someone told you it was nothing. Ellen started talking, and Carrie started writing. Outside, the Connecticut evening was settling into darkness, quiet and ordinary and unremarkable. In her crib, upstairs, Lily slept peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of a child who is safe and warm and entirely unaware of how close she came to never taking a breath at all. 47 seconds. That is how long Lily did not breathe. That is how close Megan Hale came to winning. That is the margin between the life Carrie has now and no life at all. But 47 seconds is also how long it takes to decide that you are done being a victim. That you are done being polite when your gut is screaming. That you are done putting someone else's comfort ahead of your own survival. It took Carrie 47 seconds to lose everything. It took her a year to build something better from the wreckage. And it took her one phone call from a stranger to understand that the worst thing that ever happened to her had also given her the one thing no one could take away: purpose. Carrie Whitfield did not get the fairy tale ending. She got something better, a real one, built with her own hands from the ashes of someone else's cruelty. And every day, she uses it to make sure that when the next woman calls, when the next Ellen or Susan or Kathleen picks up the phone and says, "Nobody believes me," there is someone on the other end who says, "I do." Sweet dreams, Lily. Tomorrow is going to be a beautiful day. Closing disclaimer. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our creative team to deliver meaningful storytelling with real-life lessons. Every character and event is fictional, but the emotions, the warnings, and the wisdom are very real. Thank you for listening, thank you for caring, and thank you for being the kind of person who stays until the end.